Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show host or the guest are their own. Enjoy the show.
Welcome once again to another episode of YEGMS. This is episode number 39. I hope you're having a great summer. We're coming up on holiday weekend time, whether you're in the U.S. or in Canada. In Canada, we have our Canada Day coming up on the 1st, and of course, our U.S. friends have the 4th of July coming up. And I'm getting ready to head out to the cabin with my family. It should be a great time. What I wanted to talk about on this episode is frame of mind and the power of positive thinking. And it's something that we've all heard a lot, I'm sure, from different self-help gurus, and I don't profess to be one. But there is truth to it. And it's kind of interesting how I got the idea for this episode. So last week, I had a meeting with my team that's helping me to put together the 2019 really long run to end MS, which is going to be roughly a 100-kilometer single-day run from Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta to Devon, Alberta through the Edmonton River Valley. And to put on an event like that, I need a lot of help. I mean, these things don't happen without the help of some really great people. And as we were talking about, media and getting on the radio, and Mark, who has become a good friend of mine, he has a background in communications, and he was saying, well, Sean, what we need to do is create your story and keep repeating that. And to be honest, the first time I did the really long run in 2015 and again in 2016, I didn't put together anything like that. And to be quite frank, I don't like talking. Man, it's ironic me saying this on a podcast that I created about multiple sclerosis, but I don't like talking about how MS affects me. I don't like talking about my symptoms. I don't like talking about my bad days. And really what Mark had said was people need to find a way to connect with you. And if they understand your story, they might be more willing to get involved. And I have to say I was a little bit resistant to the suggestion because I don't like, again, the irony of me saying this on this podcast, but it's true, I don't like talking about it. And specifically, I don't like talking about symptoms, and I don't like talking about all that stuff. So I've been thinking for the past week about why that is. Why is it that I'm reluctant? Even though I talk about MS all the time, I have a podcast, I talk to other MSers, but why am I reluctant to talk about it? And I think it's, for me anyway, I think it's pretty clear why. it makes me feel like a patient. It makes me feel like somebody who's sick. It makes me feel like somebody who's weak. And as I'm saying this into this microphone, I have to admit it makes me feel a certain sense of failure. Because I always have to wonder, did my lifestyle and did poor choices lead to me developing multiple sclerosis? And what that's an offshoot of is I want to be able to control every aspect of my life. And I don't know if that's always realistic. For example, if you look at my choice of profession, for me, there's always an element of control. I control my schedule. I control what I do. I control who I talk to. And putting out those very intimate and internal feelings and admitting that I have, a problem is very tough for me to do. Very difficult. And I think that's why I wanted to do the long run in the first place. It was to prove not only to myself, but to other people that I'm no less of a person, in spite of my MS, than anyone else. Because for me, it was like, look, I can run for 10 hours without stopping. Can you? Am I really a sick person? And in a lot of ways, I think that was healthy in terms of getting into better physical condition. But there's other aspects of it that what Mark was asking me about and asking me to do forced me to realize might not be the healthiest in terms of my own mental well-being. And as you can tell, it really put me on the spot. So anyway, I was really thinking about, okay, what is my story? And how do I want people to relate to me? And on this 11-year journey that I've been on, I was diagnosed about 11 years ago. The one thing that I've always come back to and forced myself to really focus on is being positive. Finding ways to find positivity in every aspect of my life. As tough as it is sometimes. And I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before, how in some ways I feel that MS was a blessing in disguise in the sense that it sent me down a different path, a far less self-destructive path than the one that I was on. I mean, I don't know that if I wasn't diagnosed, that I'd be married right now, that I'd have 2 wonderful kids right now. Because I was drifting and lost before that. And a lot of my decisions weren't great. So to Mark's point, here's my story. And then I'll tie that into positive thinking and my feelings around that. So for long-time listeners, you've already heard this. You may want to fast forward. For new listeners, maybe it's important that you hear this. And everything I'm saying on this particular podcast is from my own personal perspective, and it's my feelings about what's happened to me. So this isn't something that relates to you or the larger MS community. These are my own personal opinions and feelings about myself and not about other people. So I need to make that clear right off the hop. Because I'm always very careful. I really don't ever want to offend anyone. Maybe that's my upbringing. Maybe that's just because I'm Canadian. That's not for me to say. But anyways, November 2006, Remembrance Day of all things. I was used to be a partner in a franchised Italian restaurant here in Edmonton. And I was walking from the line in the kitchen to my office, and this cook I employed named Kent was following me, hounding me for a 50-cent an hour raise. And every time I talked to this guy, he wanted an extra 25 cents an hour. Then it's 50 cents an hour. You gave him 25 cents, he wanted 50. And then you just knew it was going to escalate to $1, to $2, to $4. And not that 25 cents or 50 cents would make or break anything. I mean, it wasn't the case. It was more of a case of performance. But anyways, he was hounding me for it, and my entire right side went numb. From my toe to the tip of my head, my entire right side went numb. And my initial thought was, oh my God, I'm having a stroke. And I had just turned 30 that October. So a month earlier, I turned 30. And not really sure what to do. But my parents actually lived about a 5-minute drive from the restaurant. And thankfully they were home. I explained to them what was going on, and they took me to the hospital. I was hoping it was no big deal, but I realized quite quickly that it was a big deal, because when we got to emergency, I didn't have to wait. They brought me right in, which reinforced my thought that I was having a stroke. They tested me they tested my heart, They did all these tests on me. They weren't really sure what was going on, but the doctor on call there asked me, do you have any family history of MS? I had to answer yes, because I have a maternal aunt that has it as well. And then started the investigation. So after MRIs and tests and stuff, I was officially diagnosed in May of 2007. And that first MS attack was pretty nasty. I lost control of my right eye. I could see out of it, but it wouldn't track, so I had to wear an eye patch because it was really, really disorienting. My balance was gone. I had trouble getting to the bathroom, and it was about as awful as an experience as I've ever had. And the symptoms lasted for coincidentally they really started to subside about the same time that I got the official diagnosis. And later in 2007, I got back to the point where I felt relatively normal, other than, numbness in my fingertips and fatigue and sort of some of the more mild symptoms. And about 2 years later, both my feet went numb. And which they've only started getting reasonably better in the last year and a half. Now, that's how MS started for me. And I do remember the biggest emotion I remember from that time was anger. That pity party. Why did this happen to me? Why doesn't this happen to other people? Why is my luck so bad? But then something quite amazing happened. I made up my mind that I wasn't going to live as a career patient. And I sent an email to all my very close friends and family that basically read, I'm going to outlive you all, so don't you be worrying about me. And I do not want, every time I walk up to somebody and say hello, they do that little head tilt and go, oh, how you doing? I don't want to live like that. And then that started me on a process where I worked very, very hard to hide my symptoms. And as I said to Mark when we were talking, I've gotten so good at hiding my symptoms that I feel like I'd probably be in the top 10 in the world as being able to hide their MS. Because most people that meet me now are shocked to find out that I have it. But even my mom, who was sitting at the table, she says, well, how do you hide it? And one of the things that's been progressing, I guess, in the best way to put it, is over the last couple of years, is I've started to stutter more, which drives me bananas. I work in sales. I have to present to clients, and you can't be stuttering through presentations. So what I've taught myself to do is I pause a lot. The reason why is I can see it just happened right there. I can feel it come on, and so I just stop and I'll just go for a long pause until I kind of find myself. Or what I'm doing a lot of the times is trying to find a different word that roughly means. I try and find a synonym. I'm not even gonna edit it out because it goes to what I'm talking about. But I try and find a word that means the same thing, or a phrase that means the same thing, so that I don't have to stutter, but I know what's going on. As far as my numbness in my feet, you wouldn't really notice. No one would notice that. But the one thing where it affects me the most is, because I'm probably speaking to mostly people with MS right now, and this is something you'll be very aware of, is fatigue. It's something that I, go through probably not quite once a week, where I have a day where I just don't wake up. Like, I wake up, but I never really wake up. And I just feel lethargic and kind of dopey, and I just can't process at a level that I would like to. Which it makes it difficult at home, especially, you get up in the morning at 7 in the morning and you've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old both trying to talk to you at the same time, and your wife's trying to talk to you, and because I don't want to admit that anything's wrong, I just try and push through it. Where I'm growing and where I'm realizing it's better just to let people know, like, look, I need a minute. I'm not quite there. I just can't quite be there. And it's frustrating, and it's not something I like talking about. Because I'd rather say, no, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I can do anything you can do. Because I want to believe I can do anything. I don't necessarily know that I believe that, but I want to believe that. So that's kind of, that's kind of my story. As far as other symptoms, I mean, I have a constant numbness that runs down my right arm, right into my right pinky, that never goes away. I have a spot on my left hand, on my index finger on my left hand, where it's just a complete, I would call it a dead spot. I just can't feel anything. Like I can touch it with my thumb, and I can feel it from my thumb side, but I can't feel it from my finger side, and it's kind of a weird sensation. And the problems with balance sometimes. I'm really careful when I run stairs, especially running downstairs, because my balance just isn't what it was. But as I've mentioned, I've taught myself ways to cope. But it should be coping and not hiding, and mine was more about trying to hide. And what Mark was asking me has forced me to realize I can't hide. And it is c'est la vie, right? It is what it is. It's yeah, I've got myself depressed even talking about it. And this is supposed to be an episode about the power of positive thinking. But now we're going to start talking about positive thinking and what that means to the course of what it's meant to me in the course of my disease. And I found an article online that I really liked yesterday that I'll share in the companion notes on ownmultiplesclerosis.com, the companion notes to this podcast. And it's about a 39-year-old MS warrior in Swansea. I think it's Swansea, Massachusetts. If I pronounce Swansea wrong, I apologize to the people from that area. But this guy's a bodybuilder. He's 39 years old. And he refers to his MS as a blessed little curse. And the biggest thing I liked, and the biggest takeaway, and I encourage you to read the article for yourself. But the biggest part I took away from that article, and it's something that is how I feel. This guy keeps telling himself, nope, I'm not going to quit. And I think, right on. That's how you have to be. I mean, if you've decided there's nothing you can do to help yourself with your MS, then guess what? Nothing you can do. And that doesn't mean because there's honestly nothing you can do. That just means that if you don't believe it, there's nothing you can do. You have to believe that you can push through. You have to believe you can do this stuff. You have to believe you can get out of your chair. You have to believe that you can still have an awesome life in spite of the fact you have a chronic condition. Well, that's a great place for me to end part one of this episode of YEGMS for the MS&Me Radio Network listeners. I'm glad you had a listen, and hopefully this is helpful. And then the next episode that will be published on the MS&Me Radio Network will be the second part of this podcast. As always, if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at Sean, which is spelled S-E-A-N, at ownmultiplesclerosis.com, O-W-N, multiple sclerosis, all one word.com. You can also tweet at me or follow me on Twitter at OWNDOTCOM and then the number 1. So it's at ownms.com1. You can find Own Multiple Sclerosis on Facebook. And you can also find the Really Long Run to End MS on Facebook. And then, of course, you can visit ownmultiplesclerosis.com and reallylongruntoendms.ca. Anyways, that's all my time for this week. Please check out the second part of this podcast when the MS&Me Radio Network publishes part 2. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.